In recent years, we've seen lies about Michael Jordan's career break the internet. The people who spread them tend to either be kids who never actually watched Jordan play, or media pundits who are getting paid to lie for LeBron James to make an invalid case for him as the GOAT. I'm here to expose the 11 biggest lies we've seen told about MJ. I'll start with the most ridiculous one. No left hand. First of all, if that was even a little bit true, wow, was his right hand absolutely godly to be able to dominate the way he did? Secondly, all it takes is watching a few clips, even when he was 40 playing for the Wizards, to know MJ was more than capable of using his left hand. MJ even once made a free throw in an actual NBA game with his left hand. One of his most famous moments in the NBA Finals was finishing with his left hand. Sure, it may have been an uncontested layup, but to have enough body control and hang time to be able to switch hands while in midair and convert the layup, most people can't even do that while just at the park by themselves. So how could someone who couldn't use his left even possibly attempt that without any confidence? Kobe Bryant, who had one of the best left hands we've ever seen, modeled his game after Jordan, right? Why would someone with that great of a left hand, someone who even went past his prime and just suffered a season-ending shoulder injury, play the rest of that game with his left hand, want to model his game after someone who couldn't use his left hand at all? The second lie I'm going to expose, which is that MJ couldn't shoot threes, is one that people who only look at stats without caring about context say. If you really think Michael Jordan couldn't turn into a knockdown shooter from three if he really wanted to, that's insulting to his work ethic. Let's listen to the man himself speak on his three-point shooting.
My three-point shooting is something that I don't want to excel at because it takes away from all phases of my game. My game is a fake drive to the hole, penetrate, dish off, dunk, or whatever. And when you have that mentality, as I found out in the first game, of making threes, you don't go to the hole as much. You go to the three-point line and you start sitting there waiting for someone to find you. And that's not my mentality. And I don't want to create that because it takes away from my other parts of my game.
Him only shooting 32% from three for his career has gotten people to say he'd be more like DeMar DeRozan if he played today. That's definitely not true. The only thing DeRozan has in common with Jordan is that the mid-range game is their bread and butter. MJ was still far better defensively, better at moving without the ball, a lot more athletic, a much fiercer competitor, a better passer, and a lot more confident than DeMar ever was or will be. Jordan was also a better three-point shooter than DeRozan if we're going by their career percentages. MJ's first 4 years in the league, percentage-wise, he was really bad from three, but that was also when the three-point line was still fairly new to the NBA, and the average amount of attempts per game was just 3, and the average percentage was just 28%. MJ was still way below that mark, but again, he wasn't prioritizing the three ball. You can see, if you actually look at his year-by-year numbers, that when he chose to take more threes, his percentage went up. Look at the 3 seasons where MJ attempted at least 3 threes per game. That may be a tiny number of attempts now, but back then, it wasn't that much less than how many threes some of the best snipers of the 90s like Reggie Miller, Glenn Rice, Dan Marley, or Terry Porter were attempting. MJ made over 37% in all 3 of those seasons and even shot 42.7% from 3 in the 1995-96 season. He shot 38.9% on 3.8 attempts per game during the playoffs of his 3rd championship run. The 3.8 attempts per game in that playoff run were the most of any playoff run he's ever been a part of. The Blazers tried daring him to shoot the 3 in Game 1 of the 1992 NBA Finals after Clyde Drexler questioned if MJ could match his three-point skill before the game. What did MJ do in response to that? Make 6 out of 10, no big deal. In MJ's entire finals career, he shot 36.8% from 3 on 3.3 attempts per game. Now, for those who may be wondering, what about the fact that the three-point line was shortened during MJ's prime? That happened from the 1994-95 season when MJ came back from his baseball stint to the 1996-97 season, which surely MJ benefited from in 96 and 97. Still, he shot 35 35% from 3 in 1993 when he averaged 2.9 attempts per game, and upped that to 38.9% on 3.8 attempts per game in the playoffs. The shrug game was also before the three-point line was shortened. In the 4 finals he won without the shortened three-point line, he shot 40% from 3. In Jordan's Wizards years, yes, he shot horribly from 3. However, he wasn't even attempting 1 3 per game in those 2 seasons. He was definitely not prioritizing it when he had bad knees and was approaching 40. He was really good at making 2s though. He shot 82% from mid-range during his time in DC. His scoring average only dropped to 22 points per game from 25 when he tried to play through a torn meniscus he just had surgery on because he knew his team that won just 19 games the year prior was screwed without him. The Wizards were 26-20 before the meniscus tear without any other major roster changes besides Jordan. Michael Jordan was capable of shooting 3s, he just chose not to prioritize it. Should he be mentioned in the upper echelon of the greatest 3-point shooters of all time like Stephen Curry, Ray Allen, or Reggie Miller? No, of course not. But could he have been if he prioritized it? Absolutely. Lie number 3 that I'm exposing: MJ was nobody without Phil Jackson or Scottie Pippen. Now, in no way am I denying that he needed them at all. Of course they were important to the Bulls dynasty, but those who try to uplift them for the sake of diminishing Michael Jordan's accomplishments grossly exaggerate how much they actually did for Jordan. It gets brought up all the time that MJ was 1-9 in the playoffs before Pippen arrived. Please, tell me what exactly Scottie Pippen did to win Jordan his first playoff series. He didn't start 1 game during that regular season and averaged under 10 points per game for the whole season. In that first round series against the Cavs, Pippen was scoreless in game 1 and scored 8 points in game 2, both games which the Bulls won. Game 4, Pippen actually scored 15 off the bench. In a game, Jordan scored 44 and the Bulls lost. Game 5, Pippen actually started for the first time in his NBA career, had his best game yet as a pro with 24 points while shooting 50% from the field. But guess what? Jordan scored 39 in that game while shooting 54.5% from the field. So was Pippen really the reason the Bulls got past the Cavs that year? Definitely not. For that entire season, Jordan averaged 35 points per game with no one else in the team even averaging 14 points per game as the Bulls went 50-32. Jordan also led the team in assists and field goal percentage. As a guard, he led the team in blocks. He also led the league in steals that year. He was the MVP and Defensive Player of the Year that year. Pippen reached his prime in 1990, his 3rd year in the league, which was when he made his first All-Star appearance. This was also Phil Jackson's first year as the head coach of the Bulls. That year, the Bulls went to 7 games against the Pistons in the conference finals, and Jordan scored 31 in Game 7, while everyone else on the Bulls that took at least 8 shots, including Pippen, shot 20% or under. Pippen was 1 for 10 in that game while playing through a migraine. In the 1991 finals, Michael Jordan was Magic Johnson's primary defender for most of the series. Pippen took on the assignment in Game 2 when Jordan was in foul trouble and did a great job. Game 3, after Pippen fouled out, Jordan remained Magic's primary defender for the rest of the series. Let's listen to what Pippen had to say while celebrating the championship.
Your thoughts on your role defensively on Magic, that big switch before Game 2?
Well, it's helped us out a lot. I think Michael realized that by stepping up and putting a lot more pressure on Magic, and I think that's why Phil stuck with Michael, because he was able to put a lot more pressure than what he did in Game 1.
Scottie, congratulations.
Thanks so much.
People love to talk about how the Bulls won 55 games in the year of Jordan's first retirement. You know this was the year the Bulls added Tony Kukoc and Steve Kerr to the roster, right? That year, Pippen showed he can lead a team to the playoffs, but he folded in the second round series against the Knicks. The Bulls were lucky because of a fight that took place early in Game 3 in which the Knicks had the more significant player out of the 2 players involved in the fight get suspended for 2 games. Derek Harper, who played 16 years in the NBA and was a starter more often than not. The Bulls only lost JoJo English for the rest of Game 3 and all of Game 4. English only lasted 3 seasons in the NBA and didn't play games 5 and 7 due to a coach's decision. Harper's ejection and suspension gave the Bulls a good enough advantage to win games 3 and 4. Pippen also only shot 36% in the game 7 loss, which I'm not excusing a bad call from game 5 for at all, especially when the Bulls won game 6. The following year, the Bulls were only 34 and 31 at the time of Jordan's return from baseball. The Bulls finished that season 47 and 35. Pippen did all that he could on a team that had just lost Horace Grant to free agency. However, clearly Jordan's presence, even while a little rusty, not Pippen or Phil Jackson, was what got the Bulls more than 10 games above 500. During the second three-peat, Scottie Pippen was battling injuries and was not nearly as effective of a scorer in the playoffs as he was during the first three-peat, so MJ had to do more heavy lifting for the Bulls. After the Bulls breakup, Pippen was still a good defender, but never averaged 15 points per game or more again, and the only time he ever made it out of the first round again was the year that his Blazers, who he was no better than the third best player on, blew a 15-point lead in the fourth quarter of Game 7 against Shaq and Kobe's Lakers in the conference finals. In that Game 7, Pippen was 0 for 3 during the Blazers' fourth quarter meltdown. He was 3 for 10 for that entire game. This happened when Pippen was a year younger than Jordan was when the Bulls won their last championship. Truth is, yes, Jordan needed Scottie Pippen and Phil Jackson, but they needed Jordan more. As legendary of a coach as Phil Jackson is, he couldn't score or defend for anyone who was actually playing. Not like Phil Jackson never lost in the first round with the Lakers when Kobe had to carry a god-awful roster. Now, number 4, Michael Jordan was always clearly favored to win the finals. The Bulls were never heavy underdogs, but they were only clearly favorites in 1992, 96, and 97. In 1993, the Bulls were favored, but not by a landslide since the Suns had the league's best record and it was Charles Barkley's MVP season. As for 1991, let's listen to what was being said after the Bulls captured their first championship.
The Chicago Bulls' domination of this series has to be considered a major surprise.
Or in 1998, the year of the last dance, Scottie Pippen said, "It's a different feeling. We've never been in this situation where we've sort of been written off. It's a great feeling being the underdog because you want to go out now and prove everyone wrong." The Jazz won the 2 regular season matchups with the Bulls, which gave them home court advantage for the series. The Jazz just swept Shaq's Lakers that won 61 regular season games, while the Bulls were coming off a hard-fought 7-game series against the Pacers. Line number 5, Rex Chapman scored 39 points on MJ and talked to him in February of 1996. Okay, Rex Chapman was not an all-star, but just looking at his stats should tell you he wasn't some bench warmer who was just barely good enough to play in the NBA. Yes, Rex Chapman scored 39 against the Bulls in a game in February of 96. We have a box score to look at. However, just from knowing anything about basketball, there's zero chance that Chapman actually scored all 39 points on MJ. There is zero chance MJ actually guarded him the whole time. But now let's actually go into detail about the game. Ron Harper started out on Chapman, and that's who Chapman hit his first 2 threes on. Jordan was getting scored on when he switched on to him, not gonna deny that, but to say he got Steve Kerr to switch on to Chapman is not true. Kerr only guarded him for 1 possession in the second quarter, and it wasn't immediately after Chapman scored. Jordan was right back on Chapman the very next possession. In the second half, Scottie Pippen was guarding Chapman more than anyone else, and he wasn't exactly locking him up. The one possession I found where Jordan guarded Chapman in the second half, Chapman got by him when Steve Kerr inadvertently got in Jordan's way and Chapman missed a layup. There's also the lie going around that Rex Chapman talked to MJ, telling him, "Get the out of my face, you can't guard me." Without context, this may be easy to believe because this went viral recently with an angle of Jordan's back turned. Here's the context. Chapman himself even told Dan Patrick that's not true at all.
There was no anything really said worth anything. I think I said something like, I can't let you dunk it. And so, but it looked like yeah. And so everybody's like, oh, you were talking so much noise to Jordan. I was like, no, I was not doing that.
It would make a lot more sense if Chapman did that after he scored on Jordan, but no! This happened when Jordan blew by Tony Smith and Chapman fouled Jordan as a help defender. One more thing, that was a regular season game. One of the only 10 games the Bulls lost all season. What happened in the more important games, which were the playoffs? That's right, the Bulls swept the Heat and Chapman only scored 9 points per game in that series. Line number 6, MJ's competition was weak, something I've already made a video debunking. In that video, I mostly broke down players that Jordan faced in his years with the Bulls who were significantly better than some of the younger fans realize, but I'll add some new material here. If the 90s competition was so weak, how come it took until the 2000s for Shaq to win his championships when he was a superstar who played against Jordan in the 90s and even made the NBA's 50th anniversary team in 1996 after just 4 seasons in the league? How was Gary Payton able to have the highest scoring averages of his career from ages 30 to 33, which were in the years after Jordan played his last game with the Bulls? How was Grant Hill still a capable NBA player in the 2010s in his late 30s after serious ankle problems in the early 2000s that cut his prime short? Hill was another guy who competed against Jordan and many saw as his successor as the face of the league before ankle injuries ended those hopes. If the 90s competition was so weak, since this mostly comes from LeBron fans, then how did LeBron lose his first 2 finals against teams that had 3 starters each and a 6th man all drafted in the 90s? LeBron was ages 22 and 26 for those, while those guys who were drafted in the 90s were over 30. 3 Spurs starters in 2007 played against Michael Jordan on the Bulls. The 2011 Mavericks had 1 starter who played against Michael Jordan on the Bulls. Jason Kidd is 12 years older than LeBron, 5 inches shorter, and 45 pounds lighter, yet those few times he was assigned to guard LeBron, he wasn't his primary defender, but he was assigned to guard LeBron at times, and when he did, he made life difficult for LeBron and was one of the reasons why LeBron had the worst final series of any superstar ever. How is that even possible if the 90s competition was so weak, and why would he have been assigned to guard LeBron in the first place? When he was ancient at that point in his career, if 90s competition was so weak, why did LeBron need a super team to beat the Celtics with Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and Ray Allen, who were all drafted in the 90s, and KG and Allen played against Bulls Michael Jordan? The Celtics Big Three came together when they were 30 to 32 years old and beat LeBron again 2 years after they came together. Or how was Ray Allen at the age of 37 as a bench player able to save LeBron's legacy in Game 6 of the 2013 finals if 90s players were so bad? Why did LeBron even want a guy who was drafted in the 90s and played against MJ in his prime? Hell, he even tried to convince Ray Allen to reunite with him in Cleveland in January of 2015 when Ray hadn't even played a single NBA game since the Heat lost in the previous year's finals. I wonder why he would do that with a 90s player in his old age if 90s players were so bad. On to line number 7, that the second three-peat Bulls were a super team after acquiring Dennis Rodman. A lot of the same people who say that also say the Pistons were old when the Bulls beat them. Also not true, but Dennis Rodman 5 years later made the Bulls a super team? Neither Michael Jordan nor Scottie Pippen ever asked Jerry Krause to get Dennis Rodman. They never told Rodman, hey, come play with us. Even Jerry Krause was completely against the idea of bringing in Rodman. Phil Jackson did not consider him to be a high priority. It was the Bulls assistant GM Jim Slack who was so persistent about Rodman to the point where Krause was even irritated and had to let Rodman stay over at his place before deciding to pull the trigger on getting him. All the Bulls gave up in order to get Rodman was Will Perdue because the Spurs were that desperate to get rid of him. This does not sound anything like how LeBron formed his super teams, does it? MJ and Pippen had to sign off on bringing in Rodman, but it was never initially their idea to get him. Yes, in hindsight, it was a brilliant move for the Bulls, Bulls, but at the time, it was seen as a gamble. They didn't throw a party like they already won a championship and tell the world,
"I won championships."
Not 2.
LeBron, tell us about that.
Not 2, not 3, not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7.
Because Rodman arrived. Michael Jordan never had the power that front offices give LeBron. MJ didn't even want the Bulls to draft or trade for Scottie Pippen. He lobbied for them to draft his college teammate Joe Wolf instead. Next, line number 8, Michael Jordan's gambling addiction, which got him a secret suspension that led to his first retirement. It's no secret that Michael Jordan enjoys gambling. However, the notion that he retired in 1993 after his first three-peat because he was secretly suspended by the NBA for gambling is a baseless conspiracy. He retired because of his lost desire, and he wanted to fulfill his late father's dream of becoming a professional baseball player. It may be well known that MJ enjoys gambling, but there's never been any proof that he did so in an illegal manner, such as betting on NBA games, and his gambling habits certainly didn't hurt him financially. I mean, look at him. Does anyone actually think the NBA would want the most marketable athlete in the world to step away from the game? We are talking about the guy who globalized the NBA. David Stern was a smart businessman, and he had to know how bad it would be for his league to be without its best player that was doing wonders for the league financially. The gambling conspiracy theory also assumes that you could keep a secret like this and that no one would revolt. This is not realistic. There was an aggressive tabloid culture in the 90s, and everyone was on a sharp lookout for the next O.J. Simpson or Tanya Harding. You couldn't keep secrets, and players were not powerless. When Latrell Sprewell choked PJ Carlesimo in practice, he was actually initially only suspended for 10 games. The day after his 10-game suspension was announced, the NBA made that suspension a whole year, and the Warriors voided the rest of Sprewell's contract. However, the Players Association sided with Sprewell for doing something much worse than gambling. Sprewell filed a grievance through the Players Association against the Warriors and the NBA and got his suspension reduced to 68 games and his contract reinstated. That would allow the Warriors to eventually trade Sprewell to the Knicks, rather than getting nothing in return while telling him to kick rocks. When the Malice at the Palace happened, Metasandaford Artest, back then Ron Artest, had the Players Association file an appeal arguing that his suspension for the rest of the season was excessive. They lost the appeal, but they had his back regardless. So why wouldn't they raise hell for the most celebrated player in the league's history while he's in his prime? All of this just tells me that Jordan retiring to cover up a secret suspension from the NBA is just a baseless conspiracy. Line number 9. We've also been told that Michael Jordan quit on his team when he retired in his prime. Here's the big difference between MJ retiring in his prime and LeBron switching teams or not giving it his all when things don't go his way. MJ retired after three-peating twice. He just didn't have the drive to keep going after winning as much as he did. It got old to him to always be told he's the greatest ever instead of having someone there to really keep pushing him. He truly believed he had nothing left to prove when he retired in his prime. LeBron, on the other hand, has been switching teams after losing early in the playoffs or in the finals and then doing whatever it takes to stack his teams as much as possible, rather than trying to figure out how he can get better so he could get over the hump like Michael Jordan was able to when he and the Bulls eventually swept the Pistons in the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals after years of losing to them. Yes, Jordan got more adequate help when Scottie Pippen became a legitimate Robin to his Batman, but Jordan also made Pippen into the player that he became. He didn't just give up on him because he figured it'd be a lot easier to win with already established stars. Line number 10.
Gary Payton put the clamps on you, Mike. We saw the games.
Oh, look! My nose! What's happened?
Show the numbers. Can we show what Jordan did pre and post Payton guarding him? First 3 games, when the brilliant George Karl's like, no, Gary Payton, best point guard defender ever, don't guard Mike. Mike kills you. Next 3 games, Look at those points and percentages.
I've already made a video uncovering the truth about the 1996 NBA Finals, and I'll leave a link up here if you want to watch it. But it wasn't a one-man effort to hold Jordan to 36% from the field in that 3-game stretch, or only 2 points in the fourth quarter of Game 5. The Sonics were throwing multiple double teams at Jordan to throw him off. Jordan shot 50% on Payton in single coverage in that series. So no, he was not being an arrogant schmuck in The Last Dance, saying he had no problem with Gary Payton. He did not have a problem with him in single coverage. Jordan also earned that Finals MVP. Never let anyone tell you otherwise. Yes, I understand how impactful Dennis Rodman was, but sorry, you cannot be Finals MVP when you average under 10 points per game. I don't care how many rebounds he got or how rent-free he lived in Frank Burkowski's head when it comes to who deserved Finals MVP. MJ earned it, period. MJ had his worst stat line out of his 6 Finals appearances, but 27 points per game, even if on just 41% from the field, that's an unbelievable worst stat line to ever have out of 6 Finals appearances, which you won every single one of. Even in the deciding game, in which Jordan indeed shot horribly, he still found other ways to help his team win by getting 9 rebounds and dishing out 7 assists. Line number 11, the final one.
My opinion, Mike wasn't all that good of a defender.
Mike who?
Jordan.
Defensive Player of the Year.
Man, all that was
10 times. I think it was 10 all defensive teams. That Michael Jordan.
All that's you know what all that is, though.
What is it?
You know what all that is. Now all that's NBA. Yeah, we like Mike. We gonna put him out there. Da 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 da. I'm talking about being out there. I seen this motherfucker get his ass bust where he couldn't stop a motherfucker. Yes, Mike fouled too, but no, they're not gonna call the shit because the rest want to eat his dick all day. Oh no, I'm not gonna call that on Mike. But down the other end, oh, you fouled Mike. Yeah, Mike. Hey, Mike, my guy, go to the line, shoot. No, I seen Mike get his ass
when
ate up before. Oh, against J.R. Ryder. Yeah, problem against Clyde Drexler. Don't forget the early Joe Dumars. You know what I'm saying? It was again, it's part of the game.
Right.
Nobody is perfect. We all got, you know what I'm saying, our nemesis with this game. But no, if you needed a bucket, yeah, and I'm not saying that he didn't play defense. I'm just saying that to me, his defense wasn't as high as most other cats at that time, or of course they put him on a lot of defensive teams because he might be playing weak side defense, but that's not really doing it. You playing the passing lane. All that take is a pump fake. You gonna bite, and I can hit your man back.
He don't bite though. He first team.
So they say.
I'm not going to question if Rasheed Wallace actually knows basketball. Of course he does. He was a great player in his day. However, when he spoke on Michael Jordan's defense, he sounded like he believes a good defender should shut down the opposing team's best player. Ask anyone who's ever guarded the other team's best player. You can make life difficult for the opposing team's best player, but you can never shut them down. We've all seen the best defenders get embarrassed while guarding the other team's best player because that's just what comes with taking on that assignment. There is also more than enough footage available to see Jordan playing great man-to-man defense against the other team's best player. Dwayne Wade is the only guard with more blocks than MJ. Sure, a lot of those blocks may have come as a weak side defender, but that is still part of defense. That's it for this video. What do you think? Are there any lies you've heard about Michael Jordan that you think I missed? Or is there someone else you think I should make a similar video to next? Please let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like. If you want to see more from me, please consider subscribing and turning on notifications to never miss out. If you're already subscribed, thanks so much for your support as always, and if you're a new subscriber, welcome to the team. Links to my social media are down below for my more immediate reactions to what's going on in the sports world. If you'd like to see my most recent video and the one that YouTube recommends, both are up above. Thanks so much for watching. I'll catch you next time.